the Poultry Canyon School, artificial turf, the soccer field. They are trying to get an outside bathroom, a permanent one, not just a porta potty, that will be there, and that would help with outside parties. Because the school is open, so you can't go in there. And we tried very hard to have telescopes at their Trick or Treat Street event 10 weeks ago, and it was blowing really hard, and nobody wanted to be outside. So Stephen and Bella, I guess, aren't here tonight, but he was willing to take his telescope and be there. But they would like us to try to do something on some event they have there and have our telescopes there. We also have this new Celestron, about a 4-inch, that was donated by a fellow named Michael Vaughn near Rollinsville. And it needs one of its legs fixed. It's got a broken leg on the tripod, but we do want to have that as a loaner for people. And we didn't bring that tonight, but we do have the Army in case it's clear enough at the end. We'll take that out. And so first, where do we go? Oh, there you are. Okay. So what we're going to do, Dewey's going to show about a 4-minute or 2-minute video off of Denver Channel 4. Can you tell us a little bit? Yeah, come on up. And then I'll explain after you. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, he's going to show us the video. He'll explain it to you. And then Leonard's going to give a very brief update on space, international space missions. We just came back from the big, huge international space, aeronautics conference in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. 6,500 very enthusiastic space people from around the world. It was amazing. And he'll tell you a little bit about that. And then John will do a brief astronomy news update. And then Judy, I think, is going to show us a couple of her astro
it's going to be out of the way.
Pictures. And then we'll have Rich Bean speak. So this first part will go very fast, and then we'll get to Rich. Thank you for being here.
All right. If you were here 2 months ago or so, you might have seen my presentation on these spacesuits that I helped make for the Mars Society. They have a couple of these habitats, one in Utah, one up in the Canadian Arctic, where they use simulated Mars missions where the people have to put on spacesuits to go outside and kind of practice some of the logistic issues that would come up if you're having to land mission to Mars and land. One of the things I mentioned in that talk was that
human mission to Mars. And we're sending women to. Sorry.
I'm going to have to learn to say that, aren't I?
Yeah, you are.
A human mission.
He said man mission.
I said man.
I heard it.
It's okay.
Yes.
That's my job.
Right. It's so politically incorrect. So
No.
anyway, at the end of that, I mentioned that I've been kind of out of touch with the Mars Society since then, because I started with that back in 2001, so we're coming up on 15, 20 years. And then Thursday night, happened to stumble upon this news story on Channel 4 about something that's still going on out there associated with the University of Colorado and the idea of first responders having to deal with medical emergencies on Mars. So they're practicing that out at NDRS. So go ahead and play that.
Even in space. That's why CU Boulder and CU Anschutz have created a first-of-its-kind course on how to be a first responder in space. CBS 4's Karen Morford live in Aurora. And Karen, you got a lesson on how it's done.
And Jim, doctors from here at CU Anschutz and engineers from CU Boulder really developed this material for this course. It starts in the classroom, but it ends with some hands-on experience.
What looks like a new blockbuster set in space is actually reality here on Earth.
Most of the simulations started with a general mission task.
With a focus on aerospace, Maria Callas is one of the first CU students to take a first-of-its-kind course that combines medicine, engineering, and space.
It's like, oh my gosh, like this is so me.
It's inevitable. If you're on a 3-year mission to Mars, it's inevitable that something's going to happen.
Dr. Allison Anderson is an assistant professor of aerospace engineering at CU Boulder, one of 2 educators behind the course.
Having people be trained and to think about how to design medical devices that can work in those environments is really important, and it's a challenge that we haven't really truly faced before.
After learning wilderness and emergency medical training in the classroom, students take it into space, or as close as they can get to it, at the Mars Desert Research Field in Utah.
It really starts to feel real when you kind of put on like your backpack and your helmet and you go into like the airlock area.
While out on missions, they are faced with emergency medical situations.
When you force someone to run through those scenarios and see just how limited our current capabilities are, it really helps them to think of creative solutions for the future.
Anderson says the goal isn't for these students to be the
So
first
Dewey
first
designed those
responders in
spacesuits.
space. It's about building a foundation for those who will.
It was a good opportunity to like see the key challenges that we need to focus on.
Now the course was so successful, they do plan on holding another one in the spring, and it's open to all students, not just aerospace engineering or physicians. We're here in Aurora tonight, live. I'm Karen Morfitt for CBS 4, covering Colorado First.
All right, Karen, thank you.
2 things I wanted to mention in connection to that. One, that was Dr. Allison Anderson. No connection to Dewey Anderson. And the others, you'll notice, they had their own jumpsuits, these bright orange things that weren't the ones that we had made 15 years ago, which are probably worn out by now. And then you would also see a mix of the kind of space helmet things that I had made and people walking around wearing motorcycle helmets. And I think that's just the fact that there aren't enough of our helmets for them to take their whole crew and outfit them. So they just said, hey, let's fake it with motorcycle helmets. And what I kind of like is that motorcycle helmets and jumpsuits was one of the things we considered back in the beginning of this. And I look at that and I go, jumpsuits and motorcycle helmets don't look nearly as cool as trash can lids and plastic domes. So
with a ring of LEDs around.
So it was quite a pleasant surprise after all these years to suddenly see that. Yeah.
Do they have like headsets on the inside so they can communicate?
I don't know what they did with the motorcycle helmets, but I did notice some of the footage of the people wearing our helmets. You could see a boom microphone come around. So I don't know how they did all that. Yeah.
NPR had a little tiny comment about this is an anniversary of when you could lift your arms above your head in your spacesuit. And they were saying, who wants to go to Mars? And people couldn't even raise their arms. It was clever.
That's fascinating. I don't remember if I made it part of my discussion, but one of the issues we had with the suit that was sewn for us was that the person who made them used this kind of position outline. And so every time you did this did this. and so the only solution they could think of, because of the way the arms was done, was to lower the crotch. And it actually got so almost down to the knees. And there was actually a problem on some of the first missions of people up in the Canadian Arctic running around in these things. That's not a convenient place to have the crotch of your suit, and people would trip and fall down because of that. So anyway, that's fascinating. An anniversary of being able to raise your hands up.
I just caught a little bit of it, but it was
Interesting.
I heard that, the 2 women that just walked,
Yeah.
they had to build a smaller suit. They only had one woman's suit and they built her a smaller suit. But in that story, they said there had been 32 shoulder injuries in the old suits.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, what caused that? And you just said.
And we're just, a bunch of amateurs sewing canvas together. So you would think that the people who do this professionally for lots of money would have figured that out. I do remember it kind of upset me that I had, after testing it, I basically said, let's go ahead and raise the crotch up so people don't trip and fall down, and let's just figure we probably don't need to do this in our Mars suits. And so then I wasn't present when they were doing the final sewing of the suits. And one of the guys in the group put the thing on. First thing he did was this, and he went, ooh. And so he goes, okay, let's lower the crotch back down. So, anyway, okay. That's it.
One of the astronaut women who walked this week, she was delayed going to the space station because her spacesuit didn't fit originally.
Right, right, they had to make her a smaller one.
So you're gonna talk all about it. Oh, you're not gonna take it,
Okay. Hey, just a few little things I covered. I write about space for magazines and websites, but I thought I'd just do a few little things that are kind of fun. The main thing, it's okay, think about the moon again. We just went to the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing in July, and there's such a huge outpouring of interest now by internationals of how do you explore the moon. Let's get back to the moon. When we do, NASA itself, as the American Space Agency, has a plan to put people back on the moon, a female for the first time and a male by 2024, and that's the goal. Now, whether or not that's going to happen, it's politics. That's one of the reasons I live here in Colorado and I left Washington, D.C. But still, things are happening. And one of the things that just happened 2 days ago, NASA has a new robotic lander that they're going to call Viper. It's a robot machine that's actually going to look for water ice up in the South Pole region of the moon. Why do they go there? Those craters never saw sun, and there's probably, and that's the thing, probably a lot of water ice there that you could get into and convert to rocket fuel, hydrogen, oxygen, water, breathing air. So who knows? But anyway, NASA just announced this a couple of days ago. They have a new robotic lander that'll go there in 2022, I think is the date for that. So anyway, here I am. We just got back from DC. It's a whirlwind. Where am I now? I was in Washington, D.C. This is the Blue Moon lander, lunar lander that Jeff Bezos, Amazon.com, is putting the money into this huge robotic lander. And wouldn't you know it, if you're going to go to the moon, you need package delivery. So this is Jeff Bezos's Blue Moon, and that's the scale. I'm sitting there in front of it, and it's a huge robotic lander, but it's also meant to be the precursor for a human lander. They have a bigger plan. So the private sector, and going back to the moon, is very real. NASA's working with a lot of these companies in a public-private partnership. That's the big, if you can say it, you can do it. Public-private partnership is NASA and the private companies, SpaceX, Amazon.com, working together to create a whole new space infrastructure to go back to the moon. Now, I think the last time I was here, I talked about this. India just crashed their moon lander on the moon. It was a robotic attempt to land on the moon. It was going to be a big deal. They crashed on the moon. They got very close. And this was the picture from the Indians. They have an Indian Space Research Organization, just like NASA. But this was a big, bold attempt by India to land a robotic lander which had a rover on it, and it crashed. Okay, and here's the thing. We just 2 days ago, I think, I can't remember what I wrote. NASA has an orbiter around the moon with high-resolution cameras. It's an unpiloted thing. It's just a robotic orbiter, and it tries to find where that thing crashed. So at least get some pictures of what happened at the last minutes. has not, after 2 attempts, seen the lander. So they're still trying to attempt photography of that area where it crashed to give the Indians some insight of what may have happened at the last second. A big deal that's happening right now, this is pretty cool. Curiosity Mars rover has been there since August of 2012. This is a NASA giant robot, weighs a ton or so. Nuclear power. This is a selfie it just took the other day of itself. I have no idea how it does that. We have to send an astronaut to take the picture? No, this is, anyway, they do this magic, and this is a picture of it there. This came down today. This is the butte that it's facing right now, where it sits. It's been there since August of 2012. It's driven 13 miles in that time frame. And here's some pretty cool pictures. Just down today. It's pretty spectacular. You know, if you're a Mars fanatic.
Like the clouds.
Yeah, we've been here before. Looks pretty neat. One other thing that's going on Mars. We had the InSight Mars lander, another NASA probe, dropped down on the planet under control, soft landing, built by Lockheed Martin. And they tried to deploy what they call the mole. And it was to burrow underground and take a temperature. This is sort of a proctologist thing about Mars. Maybe I should write that down. I should use that, proctology on Mars. But anyway, you're trying to get a sense of what the heat load is on Mars. And the thing did not work. And so they've been beating this thing with the robotic arm on the InSight Mars lander. And for the first time, a couple of days ago, they actually look like they're actually moving to a point of scientific integrity of this instrument. It's taken months and months to do this. So anyway, that new experiment, this is a picture from the InSight lander on the right, showing the robot arm trying to push the little mole device into the Mars surface. So it looks like it's going. The last things I want to talk about, I'm very centered on China, because I think that is the story that we have to watch. The next few months, look for China to launch or relaunch what they call the Long March 5 booster. It failed the second time it was launched, and they have been working on this thing for months and months and months. And the new launch of this thing is coming up. And if it's successful, you're going to see a cascade of things by the Chinese space program. They're going to launch elements of their own international space station. They'll put up more taikonauts. They call them taikonauts. Russia has cosmonauts. The French have spacionauts. The U.S. has astronauts. China has taikonauts. There you go. Anyway, it's going to be a very important thing. And if the Long March 5 works, keep an eye on this. They've already, for the first time, shown their Mars lander, a robotic device that's going to be sent to Mars next year in 2020. And it has a rover on it, just like Curiosity and the NASA things we've done. But the Chinese, this is their first attempt to launch a spacecraft to Mars with a rover and lander. So watch that picture. And overall, what China is trying to do here, and they have a really important opportunity. If all the boosters work and their planning works, they are going to put humans on the moon. My guess is maybe before NASA ever gets back there. I don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, I think it's a space race. I think it's something we gotta keep an eye on. China has a very deliberate policy and program of where they're going. And so keep an eye on China. That's it.
Any idea what Tycho means in Tycho knot?
Tycho, no. What would that be?
Tycho Brahe?
I think it means star, astronaut.
Astronaut, yeah. I think it's their way to say astronaut. Up yours. I don't know what it is. But, you know, it is interesting, you know, the future of China is the story to me. It's, you know, NASA has got a lot of problems trying to land people back on the moon in 2024. And trying to get that infrastructure moving and the bureaucracy and DC, you know, I don't know if you've seen the news lately, but Trump may be in trouble. There's a lot of commotion going over there. We just returned. It's awful.
It's worse there than here?
It's crazy. You know, nobody knows what's going to happen with the budgets and all the finagling. Anyway, that's why I'm here in Colorado, and thank God. Okay.
We're here too.
Yeah. Okay.
You point right here.
So John emailed me this morning, whenever I picked it up this morning. He says, you want to show some pictures? And I said, no, I'm on my way to town next month. And then I came back from town and says, I won't be here next month. I'll throw something together. And so I threw something together. This is kind of, they're all in any old order, and then once I put them in the computer, it puts them in a different order, so I have no idea what's where. But this was up at Axon's Ranch this summer.
So we can see you at the camera. Smile.
Ooh, I call it a red camera.
We do.
So this is the core of the galaxy, and Scorpio is just setting?
Yes.
Just behind the tree. Okay, this is like 6 years ago, or 4 years ago, or 20 years ago or something, with a totally different camera, not my beloved Sony. And it's not even a time shot, just hold the camera up and point it at the sky, and you might get something. And Northern Lights in Galena.
How long are those exposures? I mean, you're talking...
You stand there and you hold it. This is a dumb camera, it's got no nothing.
Okay.
So you just point it and hold it.
Where was this?
Galena, Alaska.
Oh, Alaska.
And your daughter lives up there.
Right. In fact, we take it to her front yard, back there. There wasn't a lot of color to them, but they were very, very active, very journey. That was taken right up here in the park.
Golden Gate?
You're Gillian? Yeah.
Golden Gate?
Yeah. It was one of those things you just pull off the road and you stop. What I was trying to do is hide the sun itself behind the car or something so that you can see the colors of the rainbows. This again is up at Axon's Ranch this summer. This is early in the evening when I first started. There was so much light on the clouds. And it was 13 seconds forward. And this one airplane.
It was a busy night for airplanes.
That's the Orion Nebula. And, considering what I've got to work with, it's pretty amazing that it's not just a dot. So
You're taking that through your camera, not through your telescope.
that is no telescope. That's my camera, and then blow it up to the extent of the whatever I can stand. That was the eclipse. This is the one that didn't rain on or snow on the wall.
I blew that up so it's a little fuzzy.
This was just last week, and what I was trying to get is the color of the, well, I was calling it a moon bow, but it's the opposite of a moon bow. It's more the same thing as the perihelion around the sun. And the moon glory? Yeah, I like that.
Iridescence.
And the green thing is just the flare of the moon.
But you can see the phase of the moon
Yeah, with the flare.
with the flare. The phase of the moon.
Oh, right. Yeah. And that thing standing there howling at it has to be a wolf, right?
Yeah, look at that.
That was the best one up at Eclipses. And I probably over-edited about 3 times too much, but it was fun.
And that's a plane?
Yeah, that's a plane. That's a little less edited. That's great. That is taking, this is off my deck, taking the lens ball and getting and don't ask me what that streak of yellow is. After I saw that in there, I looked around. I couldn't see anything anywhere in my environment that was making that streak of yellow. I have no idea what that is.
The ghost.
Yeah, Martha. This is just for kicks because if you look closely, you can see the stars up in the top part, and yet the light from Denver was so brilliant on that later model. I can do that.
What was that like?
That
Yeah,
was
can't.
with
What
Sony.
lens?
I did break down and use a tripod, and it's a day before full, so you get a little bit of, I like it better off of the full moon because you get a lot better crater shadows.
But was it with a telescope?
No, it's a 18 to 200 lens on a Sony A6000, and it blows up good.
Oh, so it's one of those one lens on the camera that just has a huge range of zoom.
Yeah.
Huge enough to do that.
Yeah. You guess what that is? Who's got 4 moons? And at least those closest? I don't know. Anyway, 1 out there and 3 of them across the face of it. That was from 2 years ago. And for some reason, atmospheric, or I don't know what, the color was better. Just that.
That was a good night.
It was a good night. That's probably the best picture I've got of it. That's in Fairbanks, or 2 Rivers, east of Fairbanks. Well, that's about all there is.
It's been a while since I got to do astronomy news, but I thought we would try to do this tonight. We're going to stay in the solar system mostly. There's a few things that are out there, but there's a lot going on, and hopefully we'll get to it all. Y'all doing okay? You haven't gone to sleep yet? Space is too fun. Too fun. All right. That is not Mercury. That's the sun. But Mercury's in there. On the 11th, we have a transit of Mercury. This is a sunspot over here. Mercury is right there. It's 194th the size of the disk of the sun, and so it's small. So on the 11th, unfortunately, it starts at before sunrise. The second contact, right when, first contact, second contact probably happened immediately because It's when the disk of Mercury first hits the sun and when it clears the edge. So Mercury's so dang small, it's gonna be like 3 seconds. But anyway, sunrise that day is 6:40 a.m. So 6:40 a.m. is something like 1:40 UT. So the Mercury is gonna be about right here for us when the sun rises. You're gonna want a telescope for this, and you're gonna wanna use protection. Have a filter on the front of it. I doubt you'd be able to see it with eclipse glasses. It's possible that at sunrise, there'll be enough haze on the horizon so that you don't have to use protection. But as the sun climbs higher, you definitely want to. You don't want to burn out your eyes or anything like that. But the whole thing's over by 11 o'clock. So this is not going to happen again until, for us, till 2039. The next transit is in 2034, but we won't see it here in Denver. You'll have to travel. What's cool about this is that these things occur, Mercury transits occur either in May or November. They occur in no other time, and they occur within a couple days of November 10th and May 8th. And it's just one of the natural rhythms of the universe, or our solar system. So May transits occur in 13 and 30-year cycles. November transits occur in 7 and 13 and 30-year cycles, if you're here. So November 11th, don't miss it. Cool thing.
My 16th birthday.
What was that?
My 16th birthday.
All right, well, we're going to have cake in. We'll celebrate with a Mercury transit, I promise. Well, as long as it's not cold. I know, this is kind of weird. This is what is the elemental table, right? But it's every molecule in the universe, every element in the universe was created sometime in a star or during the Big Bang. Helium and hydrogen during the helium during the Big Bang, and large stars create some things. Astronomers, scientists just found, remember last year the LIGO detected the 2 neutron stars colliding and we got that ripple that moved through the solar system? Strontium was created. They know where this thing is in the sky, and so the VLT down in the European Southern Observatory's telescope down in Chile actually got a spectra of this event, and they found strontium. Strontium's a pretty heavy element that if you look at green, SR is the element name, and it's created in large stars. Our sun won't produce anything like that. The heaviest thing our star will produce is maybe sulfur. So anyway, this is important for us because we use this stuff in fireworks. So who doesn't like fireworks? This is a comet from a different solar system. Oumuamua moved through the solar system last year. This thing was discovered last month. It's Comet Borisov. A guy in Europe found it, and it's different. There was some debate whether or not Oumuamua was asteroid or comet. This is definitely a comet. We see the tail, and this was taken by the Gemini telescope in Hawaii. So it's not something that we can see with our eyes, and the streaks are stars as it's tracking the comet. But it clearly has a tail, and it looks a lot like the comets that we see in our own solar system. This was kind of a surprise because Oumuamua was seemingly different. It had a reddish surface from probably chemistry from UV light hitting the surface, but this is more white water ice type. And of course, they'll do more studying as it moves through the solar system on its hyperbolic course, and out of the solar system it'll go. We expect we'll probably see more of these extrasolar things now that we have more telescopes looking at these kind of things. So hopefully we'll find more. Yeah, John?
You know what I think is cool about that is it has a person's name attached to it. It's not Comet Pan-STARRS or.
Well, it's because this engineer in Germany found it, so they gave him. IAU gave him.
That's getting rarer and rarer.
Totally.
Yeah.
What's cool about this, though, is the moment, he found this thing, and within, the alert goes out to all the observatories, and they get right on it. So it's kind of a cool thing that they're able to point their telescopes, get off their program, whatever, and go.
What were the little red and blue things?
Oh, those were stars. So Gemini takes images in RGB, red, green, blue. And so they're tracking the movement of the comet, which means they're going to smear the stars. And so as they take those pictures, you're seeing each of the colors as they move through the filters. That's what these things are. Oh. So pretty cool. I found this story. It was kind of interesting. This is not real. This is an artist's rendition of an asteroid or something coming in. But there is debate whether how the Younger Dryas period that happened 12,500 or 800 years ago, this was a huge cool down of Earth's climate. We're talking Miami's weather would be like temperatures dropped like 14 degrees in a very short period of time. And we know this from tree ring data from about that time. So there's scientists have found some rare elements in the rock layer at that, or in the sediment layer at that level, about 12,800 years ago. And this is about the same time that the mastodons and the mammoths died out. There's also some evidence that Native American cultures dropped in population during that time. So something was going on, and they're wondering now, since they found iridium and platinum, things that are pretty rare, they're finding them in these rock layers, that maybe there was some sort of extraterrestrial event, not quite as big as the extinction event 65 million years ago that wiped out the dinosaurs, but significant enough to do some things. So it's kind of cool. Last time we talked about Starlink. That was I saw those 60 satellites in that one image that one night. This is SpaceX's, Elon Musk's idea to provide internet to the world. And he sent his first tweet the other day using Starlink. Now, only 60 of these things are up in orbit right now, but by the next year or so, they're looking at 360 to 480 of these things in orbit. And they're in low Earth orbit, so astronomers are pretty worried that these are going to mess up some observations. The worrying part of this isn't maybe 360, 480. It's the 12,000 that they've applied to the some international organization to put up. So right now we only have about 2,000 satellites in orbit. This would, it's going to blow it away. So we'll see what the night, we talk about planes crossing our photos now. Well, that just may be a huge mess of X, Y's, and Z's up there. So who knows? This is the James Webb telescope. It's still on Earth. It hasn't been launched yet, not until 2022. It's behind schedule. It's over budget, but we're still going to launch it. And this thing's going to replace, well, maybe not replace Hubble, but it's going to be the next generation of telescope to look at the sky. They just tested this sun shield on this. One of the cool things about the James Webb is it looks in the visible light, but more toward the infrared, which is heat. So any light from the Earth, any light from the moon, any light from the sun is going to affect our images. So we want to make sure that this sun shield works so it keeps it nice and cold, so we can look really deep into the universe and get some cool data about that. So like I said, it's not going to launch for a couple more years, but this is an important thing. After this test, they're going to ship it down. This is the first time they deployed this, and soon they're going to ship it down to be put on its rocket. It's going to launch from South America, and we're going to pass it in 4 years. Now we saw the auroras. I'm sorry. This is from a friend of mine. She let me use this. She takes them from Norway. She does amazing work, but. This has nothing to do with aurora now, but scientists just discovered a historical record on a Babylonian or Syrian cuneiform clay tablet from about 680 BC. This is the earliest mention of aurora. And what's weird is Babylon is pretty far south. So in about 567 BC, that was the last record. Something happened during this time because they were seeing aurora at very low altitudes. And the one from 567 BC is this kind of red bulb, up in the sky that they reported. So I think it's kind of cool that they can still find this data from way back when. I told you we're still staying in the solar system. This is a black hole. But it looks like a black hole. So, for the longest time, we've been looking for planet 9, or planet X. Now it's planet 9, because Pluto. But one of the ideas is that, and we know that something's up out there in the outer solar system because Neptune's orbit is perturbed a bit. The other, they call them trans-Neptunian objects. These are the comet bodies in the Kuiper Belt, and they all seem to come to perihelion at about the same place, which means the orbits are being controlled by something else out there. Not controlled, literally controlled, but something's influencing them. And one of the latest ideas is there's a primordial black hole sitting out at the edge of our solar system that has the mass of about 20 Earths that is affecting the orbits of these planets and these objects out there. Stay tuned. We don't know. But I think it's kind of a cool idea. Carolyn had this on her blog just last week. 20 new moons makes Saturn the dead ringer for the most moons in the solar system. Now it has, I wrote it down, how many? A lot. 82 moons. Knocks Jupiter out of the running. It has 79. Maybe we'll find more. Anyway, a lot of these have the same, some of them are in retrograde orbits. A lot of them have the same sort of inclination. And so they kind of wonder if maybe a moon broke up long ago and these aren't moons, they're satellites of Saturn, but it's kind of a cool thing. Check out her blog if you want to learn more.
And what, it's thespacewriter.com.
Correct.
You did?
I tweeted it.
Tweeted it.
Oh, you tweeted it. Oh.
Sorry.
What's your tweet? Twitter?
Go to thespacewriter.com.
Oh, and
Anyway.
it's, yeah, I have the articles on it.
I gave you credit for something.
It's okay. I thought about it.
More Saturn stuff. This thing's called the Great White Spot.
Yes.
And it's pretty cool. It's a storm that's kind of appeared and gone away, and they think now it's sort of a seasonal storm, and it's quite different than any other storms that are happening on Saturn. And so I just threw it in because I thought it was a pretty picture, but stay tuned if you want to learn more about that. It's not as big as the storm on Jupiter, the Great Red Spot, but it still dominates the northern hemisphere of Saturn.
Was that the storm on Saturn about 7-8 years ago?
It's the same. It kind of it's.
Is it the same area?
It's the same area in the northern hemisphere.
There was a storm there on Saturn.
That 7 or 8.
It comes and goes. But
Some of the scientists said Saturn burped.
That's quite possible.
Didn't throw up.
Yeah, right.
So this is an artist's rendition of Europa. Europa has an ocean that's below what we see in this. It's underneath a mantle of ice, and it's one of the places that perhaps NASA and other scientists, other scientists think that there may be life could have formed down in that ocean. It's a water ice ocean, and we know this from the cracks that come up, and we can tell from spectra what makes up the material on the surface. There aren't geysers we haven't seen geysers like Enceladus, but anyway, one of the things they've been thinking about is Jupiter is a high radiation environment. Our spacecraft have to be really hard protected against its radiation, and they were like, well, what kind of radiation does Jupiter throw at the at Europa, and would that damage the prospects for life? It turns out that they found, this guy at JPL did this study, and it only penetrates, Jupiter's radiation only penetrates a couple inches down in the ice, so it's no threat to life, if there is life. And then they started saying, well, what about other radiation like cosmic rays? What might that do? Because these are particles that just zip right through the Earth. So what they found is that actually Jupiter's magnetic field protects Europa from that kind of radiation. And so if there's life, it's probably safe. They haven't contacted us yet. So maybe, any day. And I'm going to end this with, still staying in the solar system. We had a talk a few months ago, about Juno. And I'm sorry, but gosh, I'm going to shut up. That's the Death Star.
That's the model that you can have the atmosphere, right?
Yeah, no, that's Io. Io is a pretty big moon. It's as big as our moon, and it's putting this huge shadow. I thought this was the most stunning image. It came out about a month and a half or 2 ago, and I just had to share it. What's cool about all those images from Juno is they're all citizen scientist type people getting into the planetary data system, pulling out these images and doing their own processing, and then they put them back up, and then people can vote on them, you could look at them. Anyway, I pulled these are all, some of them are scientists, but they're not all working for Juno. They're just doing it for fun. You can do it for fun. If you want the link, let me know. It's Planetary Data System, just search for it. You can find data from Cassini, Juno, Galileo, even Voyager data. All of it's in the public domain. And I'm going to leave you with this, but that's not a reason to go into space. These astronauts are taking such amazing pictures from the space station. This came out 2 days ago. I just find it so amazing. Wow.
So in a minute we'll have Rich Keaton tell us about his research, but I wanted to mention that Dave Schummel has some great cards for sale. They're $5 each, and I've bought about 15 of them now. And
but you bought about 25 or 30.
Maybe 25 or 30. I mean, I even give them to our guy who picks up the trash, because I tried to give him $20 one time at Christmas, and he goes, no, I want a card. So, well, I better give him a good one. But these are so beautiful, and they're all back there, just to the right of where the food is there, and just check with Dave, $5. Now wait, is there a discount if you buy 5?
Yeah, maybe we'll have a holiday clearance sale.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to tell you. So our next meeting will be here 4 weeks from tonight, and then I may have mentioned this before too, but at our December meeting, maybe the 21st, maybe we'll have it sooner, but we will have, all our sky watchers have done some amazing things, written books. Carolyn, you're going to actually make, and you have done this before, star material and constellations and
Whatever's left over from the holiday market.
and that. But they're padded things for iPads and computers and business cards and purses and iPhone kinds of things. And yeah, so and then we'll have her books. She's got several in Leonard's, and Rich King said his is out of print, but and a number of other things, including Mark's unbelievable music that got me through the Mark Peterson back here, his planetary music, and we had a extension on our taxes, so I just finished them a couple weeks ago, and I wouldn't have gotten through them without the 6 CDs I bought from Mark, just playing constantly.
Buy some more, we need to make a house band.
Yeah, right. And also, most of these things, they sell at the One of You Cafe gift shop too. So, are you guys ready?
Right.
Okay. So, Rich Keene has lived in the canyon for how long, Rich?
35 years.
35 years. And he was a professor at University of Colorado at Boulder for how many years? Many.
Yeah, I was student, researcher, faculty, 50 years.
Okay, yeah.
Something like that.
And he's done a lot
Far
of
too
research.
long.
Yeah. He's done a lot of research. He'll tell you more about it, but he's also gone to many of the solar eclipses, and maybe you can mention that when you're doing your presentation. This last one you went to in July 4th, I think, or was it July 4th?
Second.
July 2nd,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Down in the South Pacific, so he'll tell you more about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
And-
just briefly about the solar eclipse.
Would you want to start, or do you want to start? Either way, it's fine.
Oh, I'll stand and sit
Okay,
and run in circles.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the eclipse in July was about 700 miles south of Tahiti. So flew to Los Angeles, on to Tahiti, and got the boat 500 miles south to the eclipse spot. And I dare say the eclipse spot was quite glorious. The eclipse was quite glorious. And push came to shove, I would do it again. And there's other eclipses coming up. There's, oh gosh, one in Chile and Argentina in about a year. Another one in Chile and Argentina in about 2 years. And then, well, you just get on the list. It's kind of fun to watch, you know, and read it and just sort of, you know, abuse yourself with this magnificent list of eclipses just all over the planet. So it's a real treat.
And how many total solar eclipses have you been to?
Oh, that's a nasty question. How many total solar eclipses have I been to?
Roughly?
Maybe 25, 25, something like that.
In all parts of the
Yeah. But my actual research as a scientific researcher is lunar eclipses, and I wonder if there's a way to hold this slide and this set of slides while I go through some other stuff and then end up with this.
Yours
Is
are
that
like
legal?
Yeah.
That's fine. What do you want to do? Okay, just hold this hidden so I can show some other stuff and then get back to that at the end. Okay, I want to show some stuff like this piece of jewelry, and a piece of book, so on.
And the book, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so also if I could get the lights back on.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the history of my study of lunar eclipses goes back a real long way. First one I saw was in 1963, and my brother showed it to me back when I was a kid in Philadelphia. We shared the same bathroom. Matter of fact, shared the same bedroom. Matter of fact, the three of us shared the same bedroom, and it was quite tight, quite compact. And my brother was pointing out the window, telling me, you know what that is? And I said, I have no fucking idea. And he told me it was a total lunar eclipse, looking out the window up there above over the neighbor's house. And it was a bright orange circle, quite lovely. And I remember it to this very day. And I looked it up, I researched it to see, oh, when exactly was this thing? You know, he told me, but do I remember well? And it was in January of 1953. that I saw this in. And there were several other memorable eclipses. Another one was in 1963, which would be 10 years later. This one was quite lovely because it was very dark. Matter of fact, it was almost impossible to see. The other eclipse was sort of a normal brightness. It was a normal sort of orange, reddish eclipse. Well, this other one in 1963 was a dark orange, and then it even got darker as it progressed and became virtually invisible. And I found it really fascinating and wrote an article about it. Not wrote, I read an article about it. And here it is in Sky and Telescope back in 1953. So I'll just hold this up for you to show what kids were reading in the 1960s, namely Sky and Telescope magazines. And here it is, Sky and Telescope, 1964, a remarkable eclipse of the moon.
Who wrote the article?
Who was the author of this? I think it was Ed Brooks, but
Carolyn used to be an editor for Sky and Telescope.
were you really?
Yeah.
Back in the 60s?
Oh, no. She lived in Boston.
But anyway, this was quite a while ago. I think it was Ed Brooks wrote it. And they got some real nice pictures. Notice this one up here. It's a big, well, it's a black and white ball of light in tribute to Tri-X film. But see what it's surrounded by. Black dots of stars.
Oh.
You know, that's what they had. That's what star images looked like. They were black dots, or sorry, white dots. And then here's a Newtonian telescope, a big picture, huge thing. And then they have down here in the bottom, it's a chart of observations of these eclipses, where the observers sent in observations saying, oh, I thought it was like 3.2 magnitude, and another one said, nah, 2.1, no, 4.5, so on. And Sky and Telescope plotted all these up in a graph, but they all unconvincingly show that this eclipse was dark, and that there was a line that they drew supposedly being the expected brightness or the normal brightness, and then there were the dots all over the place, which was the actual observed brightness of the eclipse. And there was no doubt this was a very, very dark eclipse. That kind of got me rolling on this thing. Well, this is really kind of neat. You know, this eclipse was running about 100 times dimmer than one should expect for eclipses, you know, lunar eclipses. Normally they sort of run right on the peg, you know, or maybe a little bit brighter, a little bit dimmer. But no, this one was right on the line, and the observation showed so. And again, that was one of these things that tweaked my fancy enough that in the future I start making my own observations of it. And going on from there, 1963 on to the present, then doing plots of these eclipses up to, well, last year, and showing, well, was this brighter, dimmer, normal, and so on. And most eclipses were abnormal, maybe darker, maybe lighter, but one thing pretty well guaranteed, they were not normal. So I got a whole list of brightnesses of these things, how much brighter, how much dimmer than normal, and surprisingly found that that was useful information. So this is the Sky and Telescope version from 1950, 50 years ago. Okay. Another thing that is interesting here is the tool that I used. So what does one use as an observing tool for a lunar eclipse. Well, here you go. Here's a little piece of an observing tool for a lunar eclipse. And as soon as I open it up, I'll tell you what it is. There you go. Can you all see it really well? Or maybe if I hold it over here. No. No, it's pretty small compared to the lights. Anyway, it's a piece of the moon. Yeah, lunar meteor, which exist and they're available. They're reasonably rare, not impossibly rare, but it is a piece of the moon. So this is the tool that is used to measure the brightness of the moon. Pretty sweet. And you can see it's kind of black with white spots on it and so on. So if you want to come up afterwards and take a peek at it, you don't get to see hunks of the moon very often.
Do you know where it came from?
This particular one came from North Africa, Algeria or somewhere like that. And a lot of them are found in that neck of the woods because it's open country, it's barren, and you can find them there. You're just sitting out in the desert.
And how do you measure the brightness with that?
Huh?
How do you use that to measure the brightness?
Well, by the Earth shining on it. In a way, that's kind of a scam to say that, but it's a piece of the moon, but the moon is what's being lit by the Earth during the eclipse. So a piece of this is what is being illuminated. All right. Now, what else? I guess I have all these posters. I don't know if I want to show them. Yeah. Okay. All right. Scientific presentations aren't always exciting, not always up there waving a flag and, screaming and hawking and giving enlightened and inspired projections. Sometimes you use posters to make your point. And I happen to have a bunch of these from years past. I hope I can get these out, and furthermore, I hope I can get them back in.
We'll have to, we've got lots of help here.
Oh, thank you.
Leonard and I, at the conference we were at, this big, huge one, their poster papers were on screens about this big. And the people who were standing, the scientists and engineers who were standing next to them, could actually touch screen them and show different parts of their research. So this is the new thing in poster papers.
This huge size poster.
Yeah, that are screens, and they can
Oh, I
move
see.
things around.
Okay, yeah.
And they click on things just like, I guess they're just tied into their computers probably, but yeah, it's pretty impressive. They had maybe 20 of those or so with different poster papers. People explaining them. Okay.
Okay,
So,
I have no idea which ones I had here, so let's stand up here and just hold them up. And out there and then you take the order. Okay. The Calbuco Chronicle. Well, Calbuco is a volcano that erupted in Chile, and this is a poster all about that eruption. And where is the meat of all this? Right about here, where you see a red line and a blue line. And the red line is the predicted brightness of it. The blue line is the observed. The difference between the two, between the red and the blue, is the difference between the predicted and the observed, and therefore it is a measure of the brightness or the darkness of the moon during the eclipse. So that thin difference between the two lines gives you an actual measure of the activity of that volcano, which was in 1925.
2015.
2015. Yeah, 2015. And a great picture of the eruption of it and so on. Okay. One more. Just one. Oh, no, just going through them all. Okay, this here, instead of just one volcano, is a composite of a bunch of them. And the lines here show how sometimes it's red, sometimes it's blue. What that means is there's here. Water.
What?
Want water?
You want some?
Oh.
It's pretty clean.
It's so good.
Put the lid on it.
Yes, just so it doesn't
So it doesn't
spill on
spill over.
the laptop. I've done that.
Well, this shows the activity of the volcanoes from 1979 up through 2014. It's like 35 years. So it shows that there's some periods in time of years or decades when the volcanoes are actually suppressing the sun. You know, they're dimming the sun and therefore dimming the climate. And then there's other periods in time where the moon is letting, or is, not the moon.
Yeah.
The
Atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, the dust in the Earth's atmosphere is allowing more sunlight to go through. So there's like this red period here. The Earth is warmer because more sunlight is being transmitted through by the Earth's atmosphere. And there's an absence of dust in the Earth's atmosphere. And this blue area is where the atmosphere is darker and letting less lunar light go through, or less solar light going through. So anyway, this was a whole study of that, about the relative amount of light going through, the relative amount of light not going through, and how it's affecting the climate, whether it's making it darker, making it brighter, or making little or no difference at all. And most of the time, there's some detectable difference here. So darker is cooler, redder is brighter, and that would be a brighter, warmer Earth. Okay. See what the next one is.
Oh, there's two there.
Oh, there's a bucket of these guys. Is there more under there? Okay,
The one you
good.
showed.
Huh? There's just that person, okay. So I've been to about a half a dozen of these things, and it shows up in these beautiful posters printed up by your friends at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
So you didn't have to print them.
And they really do a nice job, man. I gotta say. Okay, yeah, Moon over Maui, I couldn't resist. Because that one was a year and a half ago, went to Maui to observe it, and actually did lunar eclipse chasing around the island of Maui to find a good spot. Found a good spot, and got some good data. So there's the moon over Maui, picture of the moon, and there's Leo and Gemini. And here's a map of Maui showing how damn lucky I was. Because all these brown spots are clouds in Maui. This spot down here is where it was clear. I was staying at a bed and breakfast there and looked around and saw to the north that there wasn't a chance. So I beamed my way south as fast as I could, about 20 miles, and actually got a clear spot and was able to watch it. And what else do we have here? Well, there's sort of the same kind of graph, the blue and the red showing the predicted and the observed. But I think this is the neatest one. It's all the volcanoes that occurred during the period of time that these lunar eclipses were occurring. So those are nice, not too shabby pictures of...
You took those.
No, I did not take those. Of volcanoes that cause these bumps on the lunar, like that bump there, that bump there. Those are caused by the lunar eclipses. And down here, you have 1800 to 2020. So that is 2020 years of volcanic activity. So given long enough time, it's amazing how much trouble you can get into. And I got into doing these and finding observations going back for decades and decades and decades, and got over 2 centuries of these observations of lunar eclipses, which actually quite remarkable data set there. And now I'm scrounging around for a place to publish it. So, but a 200-year data set of lunar eclipse cloud thicknesses is quite unusual. This was the eclipse last year.
Now, Dave Schummel's
Yeah,
picture is on this one.
They've got this one.
I've got that as a card back here too.
Oh,
It
he's
says
got it on the card.
It says what?
He's got it on one of his
card,
cards.
Yeah.
It says-
It says Supermoon Gulf Eclipse, January 20, 2019, Coal Creek, Colorado. Dave Schummel photography. There you go. Yeah. So that's the supermoon. That was just about a year ago, a little less than a year ago. And the rest of it, this is a big blow up of that 200 years of data. And the rest of it, in a way, kind of merges together. So what I'll finish with is those slides.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
All right.
I'll help you get these back in too.
So in other words, what does the moon have to say about the planet? It says something, but not totally exactly sure. Okay, so I'm going to grab a seat. I guess I ought to dim the lights now.
Yeah.
Okay, now which of these goes with him? Okay, so that's what we...
And if not, we can.
Okay. Huh? Well, looks like it's working now. Okay. What's that?
Let's see.
Okay.
Oh, whoops. Okay.
Very fast.
Okay. Yeah. Oops. I gotta bring it back.
Oh, yeah, it's getting chopped.
Yeah.
Is it full screen of that, so we don't see the...
Unfortunately, no. It's PDF. It doesn't go.
I think that's how we were thinking.
Oh, I should have loaded. PowerPoint.
It's all right. We'll make this work.
It will work. Okay, so this is Moon Over Maui, title slide. You know, and then one of the fun things about this is looking for background pictures. And that particular background picture is from like a book from 1819 or what's it say, 1893 or? 1893. Yeah, it's from a quite antiquated astronomy book. And another thing people in this aerospace biz like to do is give names to their programs. Project names, clever project names, like the Lunar Aerosol Climate Experiment. So I can let you guys read what that means audibly. So there we go, the lunacy experiment marches on. It wasn't free, it was, got some funding from the University of Colorado Retired Faculty Association. They're not the biggest funder in the world, but it's actually a mark of appreciation that they do like it. And so every year I get a small token, but appreciated bit of funding to pay for this thing, to pay for the printing of it and pay for the viewing of it.
And no animal students or retired faculty were harmed?
Yeah, no animals or students were harmed at this. And the presentation venue is usually the NOAA Climate Diagnostics. It's a NOAA conference in Boulder. You know, where else?
Yeah.
And they have it every year, and it's a very, very nice conference. They have pretty good presentations, and I get to show this one every year. And this one is a combination of the scientific diagrams here, how this process works, how the eclipse works. And you can see in the upper left, there's the shadow of the moon, is that area in gray. The shadow in yellow and green is sort of the brighter shadow of the sun. If the moon is in the gray area, it's going to appear dark. The moon's in the gray, in the orange or yellow area, it will not appear quite as dark. So it's sort of the basic physics of it. So you want a nice dark eclipse where it's in that gray cone there. And then there's some of the calculations over on the right. Down at the bottom you get the angles and so on. But basically the moon is passing through the shadow of the Earth, and the deeper into the shadow it is, the darker the moon appears, and therefore the darker a signal you get from the moon, and the more convinced you are that the moon is putting, or the volcanoes are putting dust and dirt into the Earth's atmosphere. Not the first one to come up with this idea. There was actually a fellow named Johannes Kepler, described it back in 1610, and he blamed it on dust and soot in the Earth's atmosphere. And that was an eclipse back in 1604. So he observed an eclipse in 1604, which he said was due to volcanic dust and dirt in the Earth's atmosphere. Well, again, not new. A couple hundred years later, people observing the eruption of Krakatoa deduced the same thing. And here's some pictures they showed of that eclipse back in, let's see, Krakatoa was 1883. This would have been a few years later. So this might have been about 1885, these images here, about how dark that eclipse was. So again, not new. Then another fun thing about it is deducing, well, where do I go to watch it? Well, this one shows maybe a wee bit of deviousness. Okay, where to go? So I look around for places which have clear skies in January. North Pole, Yeah, I'll skip. Arizona. It's got chances, but not the best chances. It does have some chances of clear skies, but not totally clear. The best skies is Nukahiva. Anybody know where that is? That's down in, where is it? No, it's in the islands north of Tahiti. Not Rarotonga, but anyway, that's Tahiti, that's Nukahiva. So anyway, it's got very excellent prospects, but it's not easy to get to. You got to get a boat. You got to get a boat from Tahiti, but this time you got to go north 500 miles. So take your chances, take your boat up there, or Maui. Maui is eminently accessible. You can even get there on United Airlines. So you fly to Maui and pick your island. I picked mine. Mine was Maui itself, not Big Island, not, Oahu or Kauai or any of those. But it was Maui, and actually turned out to be quite well. It's got pretty good optical conditions, pretty good sky conditions. It's big enough you can run around in a car and find a hole in the clouds, and it worked out pretty well. And here's one of these nice pictures of Maui. Stayed in this bed and breakfast, which was right here, on the edge of the hill. There's Kahului. Nah, that's upside down. There's Kahului. There's the bed and breakfast. There's Haleakala. And over here is sort of the second island, the Iao Valley, and that island there. And there's Lahaina. So camped here and sort of tap my toes and wonder, well, what do we do? What do we do? Well, cloudy up here, clear down there, drove down there, watched it there. And then I love these pictures of Haleakala. You could swear you're on Mars. And you are. There you go. Is that Mars or Maui? Take your pick. And a lot of interesting things on Maui. Whale watching is great. Molokai snorkeling, or Molokini snorkeling. Really a lot of fun. You go in here and they throw you overboard and you go snorkeling there along the arc of this ancient volcano cinder there. Kind of a lot of fun. The food is wonderful. There's this stuff called manapua. Anybody ever had manapua? Did I hear yes? Oh, I didn't know. Well, it's marginal. It's sort of like a dumpling, a mushy, doughy dumpling full of mushy, doughy meat, with some mushy, doughy spice in it, and so on. Or it might have some mushy, doughy egg in it. But all in all, it's not too bad. And then there's musubi, which is rice with spam wrapped in seaweed. Seaweed, that's it, seaweed. Yeah. Another marginal.
Spam part.
Yeah, spam food. You talk all day about spam food. Okay, day of the eclipse. Day of the eclipse horizons. Here is Hawaii, a string of islands, a bunch of pretty numbers you can't really see here. But that's Big Island. There's Maui right there. And you can see this cold front threatening to come in. Well, more than threatening, it is barreling in. So this is the evening before. And what do we do? It's actually kind of spooky. Weather maps like that I don't like. And here's Big Island, here's Maui, here is the cold front. Look at that little bugger there, just rolling on in, and it's just encroaching on that island right now as I took the picture, as I stole the picture from Noah. So again, one of those chilling moments, but fortunately, it develops a crack, it splits, it goes up that way, and it allows me to drive 20 miles south. And this is the diagram, the astronomical diagram of the eclipse, passing through the shadow of the Earth. And what you're seeing here, this is the outer part of the Earth's shadow, inner part of the Earth's shadow. This is the intermediate part where the moon is half covered. This is the total part where the moon is completely covered. So, moon's going through, partly covered, half covered, mostly covered, bingo. Mostly entirely covered, totally covered, mostly covered, bingo, partly covered, and then on out. And there's the split, and you see how the clouds are now moving north off of the north shore of Maui. And down here, the southern half is actually clear, which is one of those remarkable circumstances we all just.
So was Haleakala cloud covered?
Haleakala.
The volcano.
Was the Haleakala part?
What do you think? Which one is Haleakala?
The one on Maui?
No, it's a volcano.
Oh yeah, the volcano on Maui. Actually, it was.
Yeah.
The summit of it was because it had the flow from south to north, putting a cloud deck on the summit. But the immediate south shore there was not. But because of the mountain itself, it was cloudy on the exact summit. And they do have a webcam on the summit, and all it was mist and fog and cloud. And there's the diagram you saw before. You know, the smile face up here. Uh-oh, cloudy, no smile face. Let's go down here, smile. So, that's kind of neat how that works. Okay, so anyway, drove down here to Ulupalakua and observed it from roughly that spot. And there's the panorama, the circular panorama, the moon over Maui. And this one, just for curiosity, this is how do you measure the brightness of the eclipse? You know, you're out there, bunch of stars, you know, starry skies, starry nights, and there's the moon. How do you measure that brightness? Well, for example, here are some bright stars: Regulus, Pollux, Castor, you know, Sirius, and then here's the moon. So you need some way of comparing the moon to these bright stars. Well, the easiest way to do it is to get a pair of binoculars, or binoculars, hold them backwards. Okay, and then look at the moon. What will it do to the moon? It'll shrink it.
Yeah.
So the moon will shrink. What will happen to the stars in the other eye? They won't shrink.
No change.
So the stars will still be dots. See all those little Christmas lights? They'll still be dots. But the big fluorescent light will be shrunk down to just another dot. So you compare the dots, okay? There's the dot that was the moon but shrunken down. There's the dot that is the stars, not shrunken down. So you compare the two and then come up with a reasonable comparison between the moon and the stars itself, and actually can make a pretty direct comparison. And then you move the cheap binoculars away, and and then the moon is back to as bright as it was before. And just an old trick that was used by astronomers back in the the 14th millennium. Okay, the data, well, you saw that one before. And volcano. I love volcano pictures. I just adore them. What else? 200 years of volcano data. Some of this may look a little familiar. Next lunar eclipse, well, July 2018. Yes, that happened.
And you went to Turkey?
Actually, I went to Rome.
To Rome?
Yeah. Rome's cool too.
Yeah.
Rome's worth going to. January 29, Colorado. And guess where? Yeah, Colorado. Beautiful here. How many saw that, by the way?
Yeah,
It's probably in that picture.
Yeah,
Yeah, we made our meeting.
perfect. I love eclipses where you don't have to go across, around the planet or anything fancy. Just go out the back door and look up, and there it is.
I think the rest of us were here.
Yeah.
We had a meeting
Yeah.
the night of the
Yeah.
eclipse.
You didn't have to go anywhere.
Yeah, just stepped out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I just took a drive up the road a little bit. Yeah, just for the fun of it. And there you go. What's this have to do with anything? Well, this is a rocket going off to Venus. Okay. I think in an earlier version of this, I continued on talking about Venus, which I don't need to do now. And I'm about to go to bed.
And any
You're welcome.
questions? Do we have any questions?
Any questions, any answers?
Do you have a correction factor for how deep the moon goes into the umbra?
Correction in what sense?
Correction because the deeper it goes into the umbra, the darker the moon gets.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually I do, and it's, most of the calculating comes from that. So the umbra is the shadow of the Earth. It's three-dimensional. It's a cone. So the deeper the Earth is, meaning the deeper it is from the edge, the deeper it is from the Earth, the darker it will be. So that is a theoretical calculation based on where the moon is specifically to the three-dimensional geometry of the umbra. Compare that to the observed number. Observed minus calculated gives you the aberration, the aerosol, the amount of dust, whatever. It gives you the difference, which then gives you that number down at the bottom that I have 200 years of.
Yeah, the 2018 eclipse in the eastern hemisphere was almost centrally through the center of the umbra, right?
2018.
In the summer, July that you just...
Oh, okay, wrong. Okay, that eclipse.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
The one we didn't see here.
Yeah, that was actually a very long, deep eclipse.
Yeah,
It was
that's what I was
very
saying.
deep in the shadow, but despite that, it was not the darkest eclipse ever because the shadow wasn't very deep.
Interesting.
So it wasn't the darkest eclipse I've ever seen.
Any other questions?
Question?
Oh, with that.
How do the stars stay like they are?
How do the stars stay like they are?
How do they stay like they are? Because they're made out of a lot of stuff. Well, stars are made out of hydrogen. And at the core of the star, there's so much pressure from the hydrogen above it that the hydrogen compresses into helium, which then, we say it burns, but it doesn't really burn. It just gets really hot, heats up, and glows at 20,000 degrees or whatever. And there's so much of this hydrogen that it's going to do that for thousands, actually. Yeah, billions. Yeah. Billions is a fair guess. Yeah. Depends on the star.
Very true.
Yeah. But the star will burn for billions of years. So a lot longer than we'll see it. Yeah.
So, just looking at the way that the wind is blowing the clouds away from you, was there any concern about any emissions coming from the Big Island and the eruptions there?
No. It was lower. It was actually kind of fun. You could look down and see it sort of below the horizon, hugging the horizon, and there was a glow along the horizon, but it wasn't showing any indication of wanting to get up to a high enough altitude to mess. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah, George?
Rich, you said there was a noticeable thermal effect that was correlated, thermal effect correlated with the observations. How much difference in temperature, global temperature, was associated? Do you know?
Okay, you mean like when you had a dip?
Yes.
Because of the dust in the atmosphere versus when you don't have a dip?
Correct.
Yeah, there actually is a measured effect, which would be the measured dip in the global temperature.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Did you know how much that was? I think he's going to answer.
No, George isn't then. No, the dip would come down to a few tenths of a magnitude, which would be an astronomical measure of brightness. Or, using another technique, a few percent of the amount of sunlight coming in. So say if you measure the amount of sunlight in terms of watts per square meter coming in. This light here is what, 100 watts or whatever. The amount of dust up in the atmosphere from those volcanoes that cause that dimming might dim that by 1% or 2%. Which again be a dimming of a fraction of a degree.
Could you mention something about your weather station? Because you're one of the very few people, I think, who have a Culture Canyon weather station, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I got a weather station.
So it's sort of the, if you can explain one good enough.
Yeah, I moved up here in, would have been June of 1984. And the first thing I did, I was thinking of putting something stupid in like a bed, a kitchen. First thing I did was put in a weather station. And it's been there ever since. It's the thermometer, standard thermometer, the rain gauge, the wind gauge, the snow gauge, all the usual highfalutin weather instruments, and they've been there ever since.
And you've measured, even when you're gone, you get data, right? So you've measured every day since then?
I get data,
Do you send that into NOAA?
Yeah. The data goes to NOAA, and it goes once a month. I send a form, it's monthly, and if I can't do it, I would try and squeeze someone else to do it.
We might have volunteers here.
Like George.
George. So how much snow did it measure? What was that?
How much snow? It's about 18 inches.
Really?
Yeah.
And you're on Gap Road?
Yeah, I'm up on Gap Road, but I still haven't accurately added it all together. I just haven't gotten at putting all those numbers together.
I believe
I keep falling asleep.
I believe your prediction's better than any of our Denver ones. What do you think we're going to get in the next 2 or 3 days?
No idea.
You're recording.
Yeah. Screen or recording? And what kind of winter is it gonna be? I have no idea. Actually, the only thing I know of that can give me any idea of what kind of winter it's gonna be is El Nino or not. So if there's El Nino down in the South Pacific, it's probably gonna be a snowy spring.
So how was it?
So, no, that's the spring.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're talking the whole springtime.
Yeah. So we'll get more snow in the spring?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no need.
So during El Nino, tends to be snowier, bigger snowstorms, like you get the 4-footer snowstorms. You know, one can always hope. So,
No one's
yeah.
7 feet.
No, you've had 7 feet.
Were you here?
Huh?
Yeah.
Wait, I know you were, but were you here in
No,
2003?
no, we were down in Colorado Springs area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
fun.
3 or 4 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had, well, that was 7 feet, so, yeah.
Any
So it's a
other-
fun place to live. I like it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you all so much for coming. I did look to see if we could take a telescope out there, whether it might be clear. But if it is, we'll take one out and see.
Group picture.
What?
Oh, group picture.
Oh, yes, the group
Yes.
picture. Yeah, Dave has his camera. If you can all come up here. Bring something on the
Clear shot. There you go. That's where you start.
So he was a graduate student, and he would run his programs when I worked. And so, you know, I run his, I would work
The interesting thing is,
and then no traffic. You wanted
Come on.
Well, you see him on the Mars, TV show, but I always thought that the light up there. We're there on the
Was it really? Yeah, that wasn't a reflection of your seeing. It was like the only reason I was in that is so you can see your face at the rock. Yeah.
That's
No, he didn't want to interrupt him. Where did you get that?
I don't think I need to this time, but we'll do it very well. Picture time!
They want to stand right next to you.
I even drove by the other day and I was like, oh. Why do you want to just
Yeah, doing everything he's always done, so I think that first 3 or 4 days after Tuesday is pretty tough.
I don't know how, my dad, well, I didn't have
okay.
chemo. He continued to work.
Howdy.
I've seen you in age.
Wow, it's been a long time.
Wasn't 7 years since dinosaurs were
I think so. Yeah. Thank you for that. That was so
waiting for a while. That's what I was
Well, they bop over.
Oh, you know, probably made any difference, 'cause I don't even know if your dog.
Little white one? Oh, yeah. Loki.
Loki, yeah, awesome.
Yellow soundboard.
That guy there at the deer.
I'm about ready
white
for,
mustache, he's an in-law now. He's related
I'm putting my plants away from
Mike's
you, ready to get my greenhouse started.
What's that? That's cool.
Yeah. So, I weird it up.
Very good.
I did. Pretty nice marriage, I dare say.
All right. Yes.
Heading back to the.
Not yet. Soon. But
Okay.
I'm supposed to go to Philadelphia if the snow isn't stopping. Who knows? Yeah, it's supposed to be a big storm. Tonight? It's raining tonight.
Here?
Yeah. Yeah, tonight is Monday night.
To make the coffee.
Oh, that's very good.
Well, it is good to start here. It's good to start. You want to pack up and get ready here?
Yeah, now, are all the tubes in here? Cool. You're the man. I'm gonna. Nice stuff together.
A week ago, I almost.
Don't take the
Now,
I had it upside down. Luckily, it was only far from my ground.
I was falling out. I go, what did I do?
I got the wrapping all back there. About 11 o'clock.
How can it snow and it just snowed?
It just snowed.
It just snowed again. Huh?
Winter time this year.
Okey-doke.
I was going to put these chairs away and then, sorry, it's just doing 5 things at once.
I'll see you tomorrow. I think I have somebody find out if they can.
I think that was the land.
It's really gonna snow tomorrow, eh?
I think the
Sky and telescope, it's a whole year's fun.
The little one.
Ooh, that may be,
That's what it was. Yeah.
Got a 3D.
I meant like printing, regular. About ready to go home and rest, huh?
ready home and go to bed, but if it's gonna snow, I gotta set up the snow bridge. Well, you gotta be ready. Science march is on.
Yes.
Okay.
All you had was the backpack and this, I think.
That is, but unless I had anything else.
No, that was it. That's all you took out. And here's your water.
Actually, that was,
It was, but she gave it to you.
yeah. No, she doesn't want it back.
Sharp.
concrete furnace. No, it's on the
Route 66 Cafe.
Let me bring it up.
A lot of tips. Tips on it. Got into it.
So we were supposed to do a natural thing. And so every time, so mine was sort of mimicking the Milky Way. And so it's a random sky field, a random 3
Oh,
and here's the characters just looking for unexpected stuff. I was worried about how surroundings might be. Yeah, Don got those for like 50 cents. I was going to give them to the kids, so hopefully.
Oh, yeah, did you give some?
I didn't know.
You want me to give one to them to the church? No, you take them to church. Hey, you're
I'll find
there.
Oh, yeah, we Hey, Bart, I should see this.
Yeah?
I've been showing George this, but.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me get my.
I don't have it.
Is it changing?
I'm changing. No, I have to. Yeah, it's still. Because it's something I built on the flags. Well, we didn't shoot it. This is all my work. So there's a random start for me. And then it's
Thinking of a winter, what's the
so it's not real. It's just
So you can get it to somebody else.
one of the moons is starting to
So what I'm going to do for my final project is have deep cuts. So we'll have a telescope on different paths, the moon or the sun, Milky Way, and create some posters.
Hey, Barb.
Yeah. I'm trying to get Dave a check.
Remember I said that I thought it was going to cloud up?
Yeah.
It's cloudy.
Is it cloudy? Okay. That's, well, I'm kind of glad anyway.
And you're going through, is it
Just, you know, all my weather things were saying, yeah, it looks like it might be just moving in about now and maybe not, but maybe in a few hours, put it there.
Do you see what he's creating? Wait, have you seen what he's creating for his class?
No, it's a course he's taking.
I built this processor, but it's hard.
He's in a graduate program that's called
Atlas.
Atlas.
It's a creative technology. So it does it all. This is for the project. It's in the You've seen this guy.
Ready to go home?
I put the tube in the car on there.
New posters, because there's some that were taken from old posters, and they redid them, but this is in the same style.
Yes, and so my goal is to do
Oh, no, they don't think they should open it.
that was what
What am I gonna hurt?
supposed to be.
I want to touch the movies. Never had the chance to before.
We randomly created some Milky Way.
No, can't argue with that one.
My next one is to do kind of an arch. And then almost everything.
That's all I was swiping it out, and I was
There's
like.
no explaining it.
You never look at
Yeah, you put it in there. I watched it.
Oh, it's in here.
Oh, yeah, it is.
I like story.
And it's free, I like it because it's free. I need to update mine, but, yeah.
The other one that's cool is
Maybe you need more light.
Celestia, though, is more, Stellarium is
More like, oh, sure.
Celestia is more.
You got it all wrapped
So you can go, hey, I want to see what Jupiter looks like.
I guess you get Stellarium over the years, but you get
Well, I can open it, yeah.
and
Oh, sure.
nice
Just,
for
okay, if you're, but
looking at Saturn, you want to know where
like
the
down
moons
here,
are.
don't drop.
Right there. But but I go inside in the house and have a, okay, let's die down here or whatever.
You got it.
Is that the moon rock or the text?
She's in. I'm sorry, we told her she couldn't
I
do that.
know. I wasn't taking notes from you anyway.
That's fine.
Then I would have.
That's perfectly fine. I'm glad you asked.
Thanks for
Oh, that is so cool.
We have two of these cars that are
Northwest Africa.
Yeah. Northwest, that would be the
It says northwest. Is this French?
Oh, actually, it could be German.
oversized tires, like one of 19.
Yeah, okay.
And what did you teach me?
Weather?
Weather.
Meteorology. You bet. There's nothing like it. Kind of peak girls. You bet. See ya. Up here. I have to be down there on Thursday. Oh, we anyway. So, I'm just gonna sit down there. Good job. Doing good? Sit there. Watch the No, good job. I think I wrote it again. Oh, because that's the stuff that is a race. Already. Yeah, I think it's from It does. You are? No? People in town. I was trying, you know, okay, so we have So you are in-laws. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You see, that's what some of the soldiers. Yeah. Come over into a decent town. Family nap. Have a good one. You too. Yeah. Next time, Rich. So anyway, yeah. Yeah, so the fact any work on it, something I wrote, yeah, I was dealing with my brother saying, because he was actually and I'm private, that's why this is what happens, just concentrate on the Packard stands. No, I actually, and the same time, I had lots of Broncos, which is, they're big. They don't look like a big one. But they just can't do enough by the end of the game. So the last other one, they're down,
Canyon Drive, this is all pretty good. Four names, the other team.
Yeah.
And you get the third one, and it'll be on the
It was 1909. The Redskins hit 3 goals.
So
3 times.
So then, about 2 months ago, double check. And they go, yeah, it's a major, minor change. Don't.
LSU and Auburn.
No.
Yeah. That'd be wild.
I mean, that's so lucky.
So that's another.
What? The president, Senate, VP, that's one of them. Right. That was cut grass is like what people from Iowa. But it's not horrible, it's not good. But there's another thing, it's called Amendment 25, and it's some paragraph, and there's a way that Congress would be able to select the VP for that church. For the rest of the year. So, it's going to be pretty wide. And then we're going on behind the scenes, kind of throwing each other under the bus. Because
what happened to Mark? We didn't see him last week either.
Oh, really? Yeah, Saturday. Resign or
I tried twice, I emailed him twice, and I called his office, he's never come back. But it might have been around the time.
And stuff that they haven't even shared.
And you know this.
Right, they hold it off, they go, if this was our public thing, it would be crazy, but they're
he's done that
following your guidelines. It's a good thing they are, because it's gonna be like so clear, so abundantly clear. Then anybody defending them, it's like, so we'll get the Senate back too. These guys can be choked, like Gardner can be choked.
And he said, I have to back up first, if I feel up to it. So John had, talking on one of
It's
finally called him,
Lisa, his name is Lisa.
started reading us the pictures from, and he said, I thought, well, you got to know more about the best way to get people. I was ready to go knock on his door. He actually, he was off, that you kind of looked that out, because he was
It's true. When you're in my muscle placement, it's on getting it. That's a real deal. What you need to do. Yeah.
Just for a while, and then she's just like really knocked down for a while, and recovered for a while. There's 3 good months now since it's back again.
And he was saying one of his emails was, it's amazing what we do to stay alive. And it's, worked out well, but it took a lot. Deanna was great, going back there, because he can't eat garlic or something. I can't do it.
But you used to bring them back and wear it to your parents.
I wonder if that guy really had a yeah. Maybe, yeah.
Well, why? Because your intestines, the cells grow fast, they grow really quick. So when you have chemo, it comes out.
Yeah.
So they realize.
Yeah, it's just so clear. And my family, oh yeah, they picked up their mom when they were 2 or 3. When I was your mom, when I was your mom.
So it takes forever to get that.
And she was always kind of ready for me. She heard enough stories that she wasn't expecting for her. My twin daughter.
Like he was hungry.
Yeah.
I should write that down. That kind of stuff. But then through the years, sort of whatever questions I have about those myself, so years, so then more like with my mom, I asked, is she coming back? Does she want to come back? And for a while there, she was going to come back. That would have been through my niece. She was she was like, she described it almost like being in the line. Still wait for queue. And so no, she decided, not to. And then my niece got pregnant, and I said, what's going on here? It's her father coming back. So that's, following all that, she's almost a year and a half, something like that. So I see her, physically see her dad in her. I told my sister that, and she talked to her friend, she knew what I was talking about.
The other thing,
They call it, soul family.
It's not your friend. But, I don't know, years ago. It's just two sides right here without the margin. I didn't have to have.
But I was thinking like that.
Yeah, I did do radiation for, just like 4 minutes twice a day for a week. And I was 9 to 3, so I just stay down and both, and, you know, went to the library or something. I actually had lunch with my friend, you know, especially kind of fun, no, not really like, but I'm busy for mine now.
So
Worry every year, so.
Stuff, yeah. Well, my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And the other thing with the gluten and.
That's another one in the same family.
And then, yeah, I don't know.
There's actually a couple more in the formula as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, I like to, you know, get everything important. Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah. Well,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
putting on the meeting.
Yeah, this one was a little easier in some ways, but harder in others, you know, because I didn't know.
So the top of your camera.
Yeah, we'd like to get Ryan Nancy. Oh, but I haven't asked you.
We'll talk about it.
I thought it was Mars, you know, what it's doing, whatever, okay. I'm trying to run.
Choose my right hand.
I just don't know the deadlines for the, not necessary, but you don't get that necessary, right? You don't get it with it.
Well, it's supposed to be a regular hat stuff.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And it's a double. So.
And you got a mailbox?
I've got a mailbox out in the street, and I rarely get one now. So what I do is I stop at the Safeway. Yeah. So, yeah, that's how I get it.
So, yeah, that's what, you know, another great speaker, you know, that's what we did when we first started out 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just, you know, I don't want someone to know that.
They're really significant questions that I know, I really want to know. He's at the line, and the question's ready. You know, if they're not specific, it doesn't work. But this is specific, it's like,
Yeah.
and he's used to a long drive. And it's been so long, that's why I'm running like 20 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What I was going to say is that I have to have 4 chocolates in mine.
Okay, yeah.
So 3 of them trying to go together. And I can't envision a scenario where I do 3 months in a row.
Yeah,
That's something like this.
Work, I mean, she has to clear
But that
the
would
next
be
person,
such a
so she can only remember certain parts of it.
And one of the reasons,
And she can't really
when I was
help
talking
them
about orbit,
personal
so,
life.
you know, like Special Relativity, somebody
That's
asked,
not how.
when are we going to do a
She
call on
knows that.
Special Relativity?
So she has her
So
own,
there is some interest in
you know,
that.
struggle.
Then, the other
Yeah,
one,
because I've asked her about
what's
this.
stuff made of?
You're really right.
Would be like particles.
It's kind of like golf, it's kind of like part of the
In that
rules,
line,
you
and I've
know.
actually written
This is
script
how
for
the
this one,
game.
then put together in slides for it, whatever.
You know, and when I've
And
asked
believe it
questions,
or not, it
it's
comes
like,
in under an hour.
I found question.
You got it put into an hour. I'm sorry. I know an hour 15 is the,
Like I didn't
like
hear
for the
that,
classes.
you know,
But
because you
yeah,
can't
I
tell me
really
that.
think we got to,
Because I,
especially if we have John. and-
Well, they get to talk before, and I don't get started before after 8.
Yeah. But I'm just.
yeah, I'm trying to think of one
Especially
that,
with something
that I could say that,
but I think we got to keep it for now.
like,
would be included
when someone is
how fusion
checking out,
and
like,
stuff.
telling you when
And people talk
someone's,
about
you know, like
hydrogen
specific things or,
what's happening around.
some disease stuff or whatever. I mean, it's limited information
So,
is available, kind of stuff.
basically the flow of it.
Just a,
Well,
it's because
there were 4 elements,
part of
earth, fire, water.
that whole,
And then they figured
like
out that
contract to
there's
do whatever.
chemical
like,
elements.
so
See, now we have
part of
90
that,
different
you
chemical
know,
elements.
in a
And
position
then
to
they figured
disrupt
out,
that,
well, wait,
you know,
the
so it's kind of
protons and
like,
electrons You will answer questions
And that can make everything.
asking to
And then you go,
assist
okay,
someone for a
but
specific
it
reason.
turns out
And like if they have a
that, you know, they discover other particles
you'll
and
do
they
like
explain that with
like
quarks.
this person,
And particles,
this,
and right now,
what would be something
we're
that
up
they could look at to feel
61
better or whatever. So
fundamental
I can get that kind of
elements.
information. But if it was so specific, like
Feels
what's
like
gonna
it's
happen.
sliding backwards.
then-
Yeah, but, you know, that is not a simple, yeah, that's what it
Yeah,
is.
it's like,
And then,
no,
at the very
no,
end, you know, okay, so
no.
that's this big
But
mess,
then-
you finally got to
because
done, you know, and then you
she said I'm the only one that can joke with it out of all her hundreds of
there's
clients.
5 times as much dark matter as there is radiation.
Because I asked a
And so
scientific
we're
question
just
that she didn't know anything about.
Yeah. And
She's
then
trying to hear what he's saying, but you could just know what he's saying.
You know, what we're talking
She
about,
understand this,
when we
like,
talk about
that's a
all the
delightful
particles
question.
in
And I
matter,
said, yeah. She said, why don't you guys just talk? But I actually.
Yeah, that's kind of a flow
something about.
of the talk.
So
It's
you
kind of
could do some
amazing
read about something like,
how
well,
we
we spend in the body,
try to
which is a lot
simplify
tougher than being
few,
where he is. So he read.
and a small number of elements.
Yeah,
and
but he's been in the
particles.
body
That
before, I
is
know that
kind of
one,
one of
because all I know
Yeah.
is,
Well, one
he
of the
didn't
things
want to
is
talk
that,
about it, he won't talk about it.
how do you,
But
you
he
can't put
slipped
2
a
protons
few
together
times
and
to
get
her.
helium.
And
Like you can go, I
had
have
some,
you have to turn one of those protons into a neutron. Yeah.
he didn't like some of the experiences here. One, I recall that she explained that he didn't like the philosophy. So that whole experience, so she learned early on that she couldn't have.
Well, actually, what I started with was when the fire.
Information,
Yeah,
and
I like that.
it was like kind of out of bounds.
You know,
But whatever else she wanted to do with her clients, he was open to.
Well, yeah, and basically,
And she was
everything.
kind of like selected.
So that
to
includes all the
use
stars and the
job.
galaxies, galaxies and nebulae and us and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, plane crash. So.
Yeah, I haven't looked at those. Yeah. But yeah, that might. Do you want me to, I didn't, well, I shouldn't say regular, but not in contact with Brian. Do you want me to? Do you want to drop him a note and just, yeah, 4 weeks from tonight, so I think that's November 23rd. Okay, so that's a Saturday.
If you were closer to it, you would have experienced the whole time.
Yeah, I know it's not Thanksgiving.
Oh, no.
You know, and it's.
That's gonna help, that's what I've been told.
Yeah, we're kind of locked in.
You were kind of in a free.
But that would, if that was gonna have an impact with people, I could see that impacting if you had, professors from part of you. Yeah, well, we want Thanksgiving is their fall break. So it would be quite helpful that, any faculty was used on. I got plans, I'm heading out that Saturday for a week. Well, and see, I don't want, just that one, but anyway, yeah, I don't want him to, one is, when it's time, I got my food, and road directly, I worry about. But the other thing I don't mind is the fact that if it is bad, then they're not together, well, I mean, we can generally call food, so do that. Like that. Yeah, so I really don't want to. I don't see if maybe get him.
What we think of as our own entity, I said that was biology. And I said, so, we have
We had snow up here, the first week of the summer.
the essence of everything.
June 22nd.
Another vibration, another level.
Yeah.
It's connected, but it's not, that's why when people Even when I was little, there was any sense in the funeral, but that's not fun. It was boring, apart from that. His was a good talk, and it's a very interesting mission. They're an engineer. Why it's a great unique opportunity to go visit 6 asteroids in one mission.
And when is Lucy already like,
I think a few years. They just finished their printing review. My folks, I think my folks are very like this. And when my dad passed, I asked how was the transition. He said, oh, it was during transition.
so years, yeah. So, but if you get too much closer, then
and they were kind of like waiting for him. It's like a parade. I think there's why they describe the whole thing.
Well, so yeah,
But that,
he did,
yeah.
So yeah, he did that.
Of course,
He lived with you.
I don't know where he is.
I mean, we could
Try to
before Ryan and just see. I think that would be,
if you haven't talked to Brian, the question would be,
I haven't.
does he have a talk with you? Does he have to, maybe he doesn't, and they're basically saying, okay, you got 4 weeks, put together a talk.
For December, I just wanted to, did we have that last year?
Yeah.
And we did have, the 3-minute thing.
Oh, yeah, that's right, I did, you basically kind of choose the talk you're going to give.
Yeah, but no, I'd rather not do that this time, I'd rather just have the top one. Maybe John and, Ryan could do it like monthly.
Their presentations are new.
Yeah.
So I did ask them, it makes more sense to little presentation, whatever. Yeah. And
then we could do a top one.
Wholesome life. I'm pretty sure you're going to tell what happened. He was that experience when they died is over. He said, but so is everything else. So if they feel that's what they want to experience, they can. They don't have to stay in that kind of thing. He said, it doesn't exist. He said, no, there's no devil. He said, it's only experience, when you're incarnate, not just here. That's just what he needs, there's one of them clear. Many other places, and not just in 3D, but other, just different dimensions. Saturday. Kind of thing, which could work perfectly with me. I remember as a little kid, I was like,
Oh, the second Saturday.
I mean, that's kind of weird thing, because I didn't mesh with my friends. Because I got messages about some describing certain things, which would be that you like there's no doubt. So that's when I told the story because I'm one of one field. And people, all crazy, but I knew it was okay. And that really helped me through the years in chaotic situations or crazy times. I could get through it easier because I didn't buy into the crazy. But it really helped working with the mental health skills.
So I had to jump on that top.
That's what they needed was somebody to do prefab with them and make it work. And I would just sort of be there. One day at the top, and then if they were borderline or something less than that, then I could talk to them. And my friend that has the twins, she does the same thing. She's really petite little gal, she's 55. But she's worked with pretty tough things and kids. So she Look like it's yeah. I should probably write some books down too. You know, it would be a lot. Well, it's fun talking about it because I don't talk about very many people. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes when I have an appointment, it's really fun to talk to people. $85 for 45 minutes. That can be quite a bit of information.
I watch the Broncos lose tomorrow. Oh, we're doing it. I think so. Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are pretty good.
You just do it. You set an appointment and you would call her. And it'll work. And she makes an MP3 whatever. So get that at the next day. I mean, you got it. Once you get it, you got it. So that was it several times because they don't hear it all at once. Pretty cool. There's so much more than the wavelength of light. It's such a narrow little band and it's like party on. Yeah.
And so when the Broncos played the we'll see you guys. Take care.
But thanks for reminding me.
I'll just have to use the photo next time. It's rather funny.
Yeah, I think, well, if you send it, if
I can send it off.
Okay, yeah, and I'll check with her, because she's probably,
Right.
and,
Yeah, it sounds right. Right.
But, yeah, I don't know, I haven't,
Okay, but I'll get the picture to you tomorrow for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I think we've got a picture of the Mercury, she may put a Mercury transit logo thing. I went, I'm at this conference last week and I'm on the computer trying to find something Mercury transit because, John talks about it in his article, and I found a really nice graphic from the University of Barcelona. I don't know if we need, it's an education site. I said, let me know if you need me to get permission, but,
Right.
I don't think they're going to sue the mountain messengers.
Oh, no, I don't think so. Okay, take care.
So thank you so much for everything. It was a bit dramatic. It was a bit dramatic there for a while. I finally said, well, because he's looking at this tiny, so that was not, that tiny print, and I'm going, oh, I see this. And so, no, I don't think so. I think and I assume the car's still there, so that's the main thing.
Well,
We didn't do like that one time. I couldn't reach it. Oh, that was so nice. That one's here, and it was right here. Modules. I actually bring one of back. You gotta go, man. So, thanks so much for everything. And,
Left your computer with that chair.
Okay, yeah, I'll get that.
And no worries.
This, I don't know, seriously, what happened to our little power thing here? Oh, whoops, uh-oh. That's not good.
We don't.
You know that,
The little power strip there?
yeah, we have a power strip there. And it's not there. So, let's see, well, we were talking about next time, so you won't be here next time?
I'll be here next time. I won't be here in December.
December, yeah, so, yeah.
Unless you do it before.
Yeah, well, we didn't think about that. But I
And
don't
it
know about
seems putting
December.
really close.
Yeah, no, it's 2 weeks apart.
But it's the potluck, right? So it's not arranged with speaker.
Right, but I'd like John to be here for the social night, you know?
Yeah,
But
what
we
I wonder is, does that make it any easier for you? Is you just go, I can do it earlier because I don't have a arranged speaker.
Oh, as far as doing the 7th instead of the 21st?
No,
I'm talking about the December one.
Potluck, yeah.
Yeah,
December
potluck.
7th. That's
Oh,
options
December
are 7th or the 21st.
Oh, the 7th
And
is-
the 7th is 2 weeks after.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
But so we were talking about, I think I mentioned Brian Yankee, maybe.
No, you got my email about that. Would be cool.
Yeah,
I
right.
didn't know you lived up here.
You know, he actually lives in Lyons now. He used to be in Netherlands, but he knows the roads, so that's when.
Right, yeah. Well, if he doesn't, I will.
But you were, and
I
was
just
it?
gotta figure something out.
Yeah. You know, the other thing, that Hubble thing we had, I guess it was with music, and you remember you did that in one of the earlier meetings, maybe, do you remember that Madonna Hubble pictures? I think, you put that together, right, with the music and stuff? But I think you said you weren't sure you had that. I may have, probably, one of my older computers. I think every computer that's gone down, I've gotten anything off of it.
I know, what I couldn't find was the slideshow.
The slideshow?
Yeah, I created a separate slideshow.
Slideshow? Oh.
That we just used to run. Maybe, I just
I mean,
haven't
even
located it.
just running that at the beginning.
Well, that was what it was originally for.
Yeah.
I kind of lost track of it.
Yeah.
And it was like, because it was very large. I mean, I must have had 100 slides, and so it was about 200
They
bags.
kind of
So just kind of in the background,
faded
kind of
in
dissolved
and
in
out.
tree pictures.
Yeah.
That sounds like a neat thing for a project. Is that what you had, what you did it for, or?
We used to do it at the beginning of meetings.
Oh, before the meeting started?
Yeah, like right now, I'm sitting there working my butt off trying to get Judy's pictures in there, so I didn't have anything over there. I'm sorry, I asked her this morning, I was gonna ask her all week to do that, and
Yeah.
I felt like, what I forgot to mention was to invite, hey, if you do those kind of things, let us know, we'd like to see these.
Yeah, so those were, and that was her daughter from Alaska. She got.
She just has one child.
Oh, do they? And it's her, and George is the dad, right?
Yeah.
You know, because I
Who is that natural little kid presenting to
they are neighbors of the team.
Oh,
And they're all homeschooled, which is pretty cool.
Oh, interesting. I was really surprised when, anybody have a question?
Yeah.
I could hear this little childish voice, and I'm thinking, that's a child just babbling.
Yeah.
I turned around, she goes, why do stars stay the same? And I'm like, that's a legit question.
I know her from church, and she always has an awesome question.
Oh,
That's
She has a great heart.
That's cool.
And I think a lot of it's from mom and dad.
Yeah. And, I was asking about the homeschooling, because they got 5 kids.
Oh my gosh.
5 kids.
So we have
They're cute.
somebody up on Coal Creek Heights that's, do you have any children? She just had another one, and she homeschools them all.
Yeah.
And we're like, there's nothing wrong with our public school.
Oh, no, I'm a big supporter of homeschool.
Oh, I'm a big
even though
supporter of
I'm
homeschool.
Well, I'm a big supporter of public schools too, rather than
Well,
private.
I don't mind the choice. I'm just like, there's a school right here.
Yeah.
You have to drive the house around.
Look at
safer now than we've ever been. Even though, a lot of it's, the school shootings are weird, but at the same time,
They're pretty rare.
they are, and we're safe. Sorry.
Getting into Cairo is probably.
The thing I'm reminded of when I think of kids in school these days, having these lockdown drills and that sort of stuff, is I remember being a kid in school and having the nuclear attack drill. Hiding under your desk. And that was a much worse consequence. This is not going to be, some students will get shot. This will be, the world will be destroyed. You'll walk outside, your parents will be dead, the town will, and all those stuff. But the difference is, nuclear attack had never happened. So it was a fictional thing you were preparing for, whereas nobody can argue that you're being overly cautious preparing for a school shooting. Because school shootings happen.
I remember being terrified that we were going to all die.
What?
From nuclear war?
Nuclear thing?
Yeah, when I was little.
Oh, yeah.
But in Kansas, it wasn't, they couched it not as a nuclear drill, it was a tornado drill. Same difference.
Sure, yeah.
For you,
yeah, that did make sense.
But,
You couldn't do that in San Diego. We were nuclear.
Yeah.
When I was in junior high, I was living in Colorado Springs while they were putting together NORAD in the mountains. So, yeah, we're on the target list.
I had the weirdest discussion with a guy when I worked at State Imaging. He came from the Army Nuclear Defense Force, something like that. But he was a general in the Army. And their job was to assess gas at the Soviets' launch code, or the launch targets. And the preparedness of all that. Anyway, so he came, we were talking, he goes, well, what are you doing? This is like 2 days after he started, and we became pretty good friends. And
This is where you're working now?
no, this was at Space Imaging.
Oh.
We had a lot of defense-related, intelligent people coming to work there. I mean, obviously, this is how it works, but he said, I go, I live up in Coal Creek Canyon up there, and he goes, that's like 25 miles away from Denver Ground Zero. We're totally safe. I was like, do you always think this way? He goes, always. That is what he was still in that world. It was weird.
I went to high school in the Washington, D.C. area. And I lived in Alexandria, went to Mount Vernon High School. And I had a friend who was reading a book about, Hiroshima or something like that. He was reading this book about the effects, and it was technical to talk about the distances that the blast will go and how long it takes the shock wave to travel and all this sort of stuff. And he reads this stuff and he goes to bed that night and there's a thunderstorm. And he's asleep, and all of a sudden, kaboom! And he wakes up and he's like, oh my God, they did it, those assholes did it. And he's sitting there knowing, I've got 2 minutes to live, before the shock wave is going to hit us. Because he looked at the map and where's DC, where they're going to hit. And then, he begins to hear other rumblings, and then the rain, and then it's kind of like, okay, so you're not going to die.
That's hilarious.
Did we saw Gary Napier a year away?
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I mean, we see him quite a bit, but, he's a lot like that. We see.
I ran into him last year at,
He's the communications guy at Lockheed Martin. He was with John at Space Imaging early on.
I don't hire him.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you said that. Yeah.
Well, it was better for his interview.
Is that good enough for the Catholics? Well, they're there first, and then the Lutherans, but
I brought blessed this counter there. How's that?
if there's a sticky spot, it's not good enough. They don't do that.
John?
Or, I don't think they.
I've been practicing.
We're getting there, man.
Oh, it's late. Yeah. How'd it go?
spotless.
That's the part that I just.
All right, I must go, Barb.
Okay, thank you so much.
Good seeing you. Glad you got back okay.
Yeah, I got back okay.
You got back, you didn't.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, and we'll figure it out for you Sunday.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not leaving for Kansas.
I like your hair. Did you fluff it or something? I wish my hair was that color, you know. I mean, I thought for sure that would happen. And still, who is that color? Well, I got out in the sun sometimes. Yeah. I like your color hair too.
Fair, I don't have it.
There you go.
See you later. See you later. I told my wife, I'm good. I usually always do something.